All right, so now we've got our show started. Okay, so my name is Rachel. I have been with Pineapple Support for, I feel like, close to the beginning. You may have seen me at Internext, some of the summits beforehand. I do webinars here and there, I've run some support groups. I'm always glad to be getting information to the people. So on that note, any other little tidbits about me are that I am a licensed therapist. I specialize in PTSD, borderline personality, dissociative disorders, and working with the trans and LGBT population, but most of all, with adult performers. So that has been a specialty of mine for a good couple of years. I also do EMDR, yoga, all that junk. So now, without waiting any further, we'll go ahead and jump in. So here we're talking about bullying, cyberstalking, really how we can educate, get more information on how and why that happens, how to prevent it, and what are some kind of logistical things that we can implement to make sure that we have a well-rounded approach to our safety online and in person. So we are going to go into some, behavioral stuff, some logistics, and just kind of chat with each other to kind of see if any one of you have ideas or thoughts. I would love folks to share amongst each other about some things that you've used to successfully keep yourself safe. Because as we know, in the adult industry, this is a very specific population that is often targeted, doxxed, harassed, and there sometimes can feel, or truly is, not many protections because we're dealing with a culture and a society that doesn't quite grasp that these are consensual adults doing their work, as opposed to misogynistic thoughts, confusion about consent. So just kind of working on debunking some of those myths and finding ways that we can protect ourselves. So the first thing I wanted to go into that will probably be obvious to most of us that are, listening to this is when people engage in cyberstalking, bullying, online, in person, we're focusing a little more on online because we've got potential anonymity going on. Doxxing is done in the online realm very typically, information gathering, revenge, stuff like that. Is that these are people that inherently have some sort of issue within themselves, as we've always been told about bullies. Unfortunately, when it comes to the industry, there's an addition of they truly think that there is an element of entitlement to the performer or performers because they're seeing that this is someone that does entertainment, and people that have values that have gotten messed up, like seeing people as less than them, will look at this person in a light of this person's an object. So not just sexually objectifying, which obviously occurs, but true whole objectification, which is not just this person is just a sexual object to me, they're just an object to me. This is someone that I can exploit, take out my fear and hatred and pain on, take out my past on, emotionally dump on. They believe that they're entitled to this and should be because of the nature of the work that you're in. They're not conceptualizing that this is someone's professional job and they're allowed to enjoy and have fun and have boundaries just like anybody else. So we kind of have to grasp some of the psychology And why I say that is because it can help us. Because I think when we are in a state of being bullied or harassed, we get so fear-based, which is understandable, and we kind of forget, why is this person doing what they're doing? And it can help take that blame off of ourselves. It's not, any of these toxic internalized thoughts about the industry or about being a woman or about being a man or about being LGBT or anything. It's none of those things. So when we're thinking, well, this should be happening to me, or look what job I chose, or, now I opened up to this pink population, or now I did this, and I guess that means that now I'm asking for that. And what we're losing all around is consent. In any type of industry work, any type of kink work, anything. So what people are doing is exploiting that and hoping that it will have us spiral into negative self-thoughts about ourselves, put us in a more fearful state, which then can make us more vulnerable to further attacking and harassment, and I guess more erratic behavior, because it's kind of like an animal trapped in the corner. As someone with PTSD, I've definitely felt that, where you're like, okay, now I'm just kind of doing erratic things to protect myself, but it's not maybe the most safe or logistical thing. So there are so many things that we need to think about when this is happening, which a lot of it is this prevention piece. And we already know, if you've been in this line of work for a brief period or very long, we know that this is not something that we're going to completely erase. Out of all the people in humanity, some of them are going to be bullies, some of them are going to feel entitled, some of them are going to spread hatred and fear. But some of these prevention mechanisms that we can have are doing things before something even happens. So setting up personal, as in where you're at, safety, and then online safety. So kind of going beyond the basics. I've noticed when I've worked with all sorts of people, survivors of domestic violence, sexual abuse, people in the industry, people not in the industry, older people, younger people, everyone, kind of deals with concerns about safety. Obviously, the adult industry a lot more. So we have to be a lot more aware and educated on the specifics of how to keep ourselves safe. So I am going to get into that, but I want to wait until a little bit to get into all of the stuff that we can do on our computer, on our phone, some of the things that we need to look out for based on what state we're in, what sites we're using. But kind of the big concept I wanted to discuss with you all is this idea to be aware of, that when someone chooses to bully or harass, it's fetishization, and not in the usual way we would think of it. So fetishization and objectification go together quite hand in hand. There's two different sides of it, which you can see within people that bully and harass. They will go from one side right to the other, go back, or stick in one. And it's idealization and devaluation. So on one side, we have someone very high up on a pedestal. That might sound nice in theory, but it's still fetishizing and objectifying. Because if we see someone as, oh, this is the most beautiful person and I have to protect them, and they're pure and wonderful, those are still problematic. You can kind of see in those problematic statements about, I have to protect this person. This person's mine. This person's, you kind of want to be the object of your desire, center of attention. So when you put someone on that level, you're still not allowing them to be a human with freedom and choice. As nice as it sounds, if you can kind of see that. Same thing as when you devalue someone. You put them in the monster role. So it's like angel and demon. Them up here, where they're not quite human, and we're all concerned about that. And then you put them in a devalued role. You're nothing, you're less than, treating you like inhumanely, cruel, unkind. And you'll see a lot of people will start with the idealizing. These might be people that are sending you a lot of messages, sending you little tips here and there, or not. Often this behavior is associated with people not really supporting content monetary wise, which is the tangible support, but more asking for emotional labor from the performer. So I'm sending you a lot of messages, I expect responses, you're not responding to me, now I'm devaluing you. They might take things to a paranoid level of, you didn't answer me in the chat, so now you've publicly shamed me, and it can get really ugly really quickly. And just know that this is never your fault. This is somebody that's kind of just chosen somebody to take out their stuff on. I want someone to feel like me. If they're not going to feel like me, like if I can't just find you and you feel down and bad about yourself, I'm going to find a way to knock you off that pedestal and bring you down here, because that's a really powerful place to be in. So that is often what is kind of going on behind the scenes with these people, is they want to drag you down with them and have the power of being the one who did so, and then see if they can keep you there. And that's where the more concerted, like we're getting into doxing, we're getting into revenge pornography, we're getting into stolen material. That's when we start going down that road. So looking for red flags. And remember, anytime we discuss red flags, that does not inherently mean that someone who does these things could be a potential cyber stalker or bully. But it is worth making note of it internally, especially if you see a couple things together. This might be someone that you need to pull away from professionally and then move on with, which can still have that behavior going on once you've pulled away and set boundaries. But hopefully adding some protections can stop that from going much further. So some big ones that I've heard from people is the constant messaging, especially without tipping, without, saying, hey, I'd like to commission you for this, like actually tangibly supporting the work, as opposed to acting like they just kind of want to take your time, be a friend. That's not what most folks in the industry are doing. They're doing their job. We don't pull someone away from their job to kind of do random things that other people have to pay for, right? It's like someone coming up to an artist and saying, hey, I'd love to have a piece that you make, a little portrait of me, and then saying, well, we've talked a lot, so like I shouldn't have to pay, right? So constant messaging across lots of platforms, especially if one is certain hours and then one goes after hours. Like I know a lot of people that campsites and then they're on like night flirt, which is kind of, when they're mostly done with their main working time. And then this is something that could be at times a little more relaxed. And then, like I said, not really monetarily supporting anything or sharing. Like it just seems to be that their support is between you and them. Not having any patience with lack of response. If you're not answering within minutes, an hour, and they're seeing you, especially when they're seeing you be active on other accounts or other websites or talking to other, potential, customers or clients. So there's a sense of feeling entitled to just having you completely without actually supporting you. So the stalking element is kind of already starting with kind of like, hey, I saw you were active, on OnlyFans, but over here on my free cams, you're not answering me. Those are some major red flags. And the content of what they're saying may seem kind of relaxed, like, ha ha ha, hey, no problem. Be concerned about that. Or I was worried about you, I felt like I had to, ask someone to check in on you. They might be even trying to report you as like a safety risk to site administrators when you're just not answering them because that's not what you want to do. It's not time appropriate. Stuff like that, where people are making it seem like they are concerned. This is part of the guilt tripping model of people that cyberstalk, bully, and harass. Is that everything's, hey, and where'd you go? I was just wondering, or, oh my God, you haven't been online for days. Are you okay? I was so worried. I did this, I did that. I reached out to people. It sounds good. Most of the time in practice, it is a concern. And also asking for really personal information. That's an inherently a red flag in and of itself, is they are wanting to streamline getting to know you really quickly. So, oh, we've been talking for a week and I feel really close to you. And, I love your work. And, would you think of, maybe we could meet up sometime? Like, that's when someone's trying to kind of manipulate, maybe even trauma bond with you, especially if you have spoken to them. We don't need to have any self-blame for being a human and speaking with clients or customers, or building friendships with people. There are plenty of times where that has been appropriate and functional, but just be aware of people kind of dumping on you and then expecting a lot from you, trying to figure out where you live, trying to even just take up more of your time. Like, oh, I wish you didn't do this. I'm trying to pull you out of the industry. I mean, I'm sure many of you have experienced some of these horror stories. So moving on from that, just some concepts that I wanted to discuss. So we all know what bullying and harassment look like. When it comes to the industry, there are some really specialty circumstances that a lot of people outside of the industry may not deal with. So revenge pornography is a big one. So people always talk about that, usually outside of the industry, not realizing that this can absolutely occur within the industry. And people will usually be like, well, how? This is what someone's providing or what the work is. Back to consent. Distributing, this material, especially where they're trying to distribute it. They may be trying to send things to family members, friends, because stalking is they're looking at followers, they're looking at retweets, replies, they're looking at stories. This is someone who's dedicating a lot of their time to collecting information to figure out that once they feel slighted, how best to then exploit you. So they will try to use your own material and give that to parties that you didn't agree to sharing it with, whether that's the general public, whether that's a certain website or population of people, whether that's family or friends, anyone. This can still happen because in the industry, we're only agreeing to share certain imagery and videos with clients and customers that we've chosen to, or potentials. That doesn't mean that we want it going outside of that. And people often do this to kind of start that belief and questioning of, well, I do this for a living, so it feels wrong, but maybe it isn't wrong. All people that are abusive, what they are trying to do is create self-doubt, because that is usually what that seed is planted and lives within you when you go through something like this. Because once they're gone and their harassment is stopped, the self-doubt and the questioning still lives there, because that is what they created. Because oftentimes they're going to carry, friends or, some sort of group of people that are going to agree with them. So the perspective gets really shifted. If you're like, okay, well, could I be wrong? That's where it starts. It's those little seeds of doubt about like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe this is okay. It's not. And this kind of goes right into stolen and exploited material. These are other ways that people cyberbully and harass, because what they're saying with that is your work and time don't matter to me. I'm going to make something off of it. I'm going to show you that I have a level of control. You cannot control that I stole your content. That is what they're trying to say with this. Because remember, this is a full, like when it comes to abuse and stalking, they're trying to create a full experience of fear. And it's done in all these different ways that we're discussing. So when people get their material stolen, the feeling that I've most often heard is disappointment, fear, and just kind of an internal exhaustion, a lack of control, powerlessness. I thought I was protected. I thought the site was protecting me. I thought I had, good online knowledge and my stuff is okay. And then they've planted the seed of nothing is safe. So we're seeing a lot of these really strong, awful core beliefs of I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, I'm powerless, I have no control. If this is your day in and day out, we're on our way to having really severe mental health effects, because now it's hard to trust. We're losing our trust in others. It builds paranoia, it builds isolation and fear. And then the pinnacle of all this is doxing. That's what I really wanted to focus on. And we're going to start going into some of the logistics, but doxing is an inherently cruel action against somebody. This means I'm out for blood. And remember that what they perceived you did, ignore them, set a boundary with them, decline their offer, is down here. This is a very normal response to somebody. Everyone's allowed to set boundaries. You are under no obligation to provide content for any and everyone, or do commission work, or answer somebody just because they simply want that, or that that's a part or aspect of your job. But the reaction to that is up here. And that's where the questioning begins. Am I allowed to set boundaries? Is the proper punishment for that me getting completely exposed and exploited? And the doubt keeps building. And doxing is where we get to an extreme state of fear, because it opens up usually beyond us. It can involve family, friends, children. And what that is somebody completely dehumanizing somebody else. There's no care to it. And so doxing, of course, is when people find out personal information, legal names, phone numbers, addresses, emails, private social media. It can even go so far as to, hacking and stuff. Thankfully, doesn't always get that far, but doxing in and of itself is already far enough. So some things to think about. And this part might be a little bit boring, but hopefully it'll be helpful. And this is the time, and I would really encourage people to kind of throw out options or things that have worked for them. Using a VPN network. If anyone's familiar with that, that's a virtual private network. So that basically reroutes your IP address. And using that in tandem with really strong, safe Wi-Fi. A lot of people don't realize that, I know this might seem like a rare case, but it certainly does happen, that when you get your Wi-Fi router, the name of the network and the password to the network are on it, are printed directly on it. Most people don't change it. They'll just kind of be like, oh, okay, like, I'm in my house, like who's gonna know this? I've heard of more stories than I'd like to admit about things going wrong with this. And the availability to hack. There's plenty of websites out there that have common passwords to most sold routers out there. So remember, these people got a lot of time on their hands, and we don't want to underestimate them. So we don't want to build fear, but we also don't want to underestimate people and just, expect better behavior. So I often encourage people I work with that have been, survivors and victims of stalking or online bullying or harassment. Change the password to the Wi-Fi. It is fairly simple. A Google search will save the day. And then also making your Wi-Fi invisible. That can also help, because I'm trying to speak to all types of cyber stalkers. Some of them, why they're stalking is because they live nearby or they live in the area. So I'm just going to try to cover all bases here. Making it invisible. So for mine, I literally have to type in the name of my Wi-Fi, then the password. So if someone pulled up their phone to available Wi-Fi, you will never see mine. I'm not saying that people don't know how to get around this, but any step that further, prolongs this, the better. So those things coupled with a VPN can be very helpful. Any site that you're on, if they have the availability, as annoying as it can seem sometimes, to do two-factor authorization, which is essentially getting a code sent to your email or phone to log in, even if it's not on the sites you work on, and it's just sites that you use to manage things, like anything financial, personal, email. I promise you it's worth it, because that is another delay. What we're trying to do is put up roadblocks, because a lot of these people, yes, they can be dedicated and they can be very cruel, but some of them also, because they're so impulsive, don't have patience. So if they keep running into roadblocks, sometimes they will just peter out and stop. I'm not saying that that's always the case, but it can be in some. Another thing is to really look deeply into, do you have your phone number associated with especially personal accounts or things that you would not like clients, potential clients, or customers to find? For instance, if you look up someone's phone number, and I think it's like Venmo, now you're finding people. Yeah, and remember that if I'm dealing with if they found your information, or if they're trying to find it. So if they have, using work and personal as best as you can, work on making those as separate as possible. Even if sometimes it's not fun, where you're like, okay, I gotta check this, I gotta check that. It's worth it, because people can look up emails and phones and just plug them into social media and find things. And what they might be finding is not what you'd want them to find. They're finding personal accounts. Once someone has that in, that's kind of like all bets are off. They could be seeing who your family members are, looking up family members to find out your legal name. I mean, it just gets really out of control very quickly. So I'm certainly not here to incite paranoia, but just trying to help you create an action plan. So if anything you take from this, maybe you'll leave and kind of be like, okay, let me sit down on my computer, sit down on my phone, and kind of edit a couple things, just as a prevention measure. So all social media, I would really encourage for your personal life to be private and fairly anonymous. So never having like a full name. I'm still always shocked to this day about how many people I see just in my personal life. I can just type in their first and last name, and I'm like, now I'm on your private Instagram, and I could see your friends and family and your stories. Like, what's going on? We have to look through the eyes of someone that would want to do us harm. As sad as that sounds, that's what I've had to do. You know, I've been through my own story of cyberstalking and bullying. I'm really passionate about this, that we have to look through the eyes of someone that would really be exploiting and studying us. So look at your personal social media, make sure it's not linked to other things. It's always good to keep everything as separate as possible on your personals. So not, here's my link to my Instagram on my Facebook. Here's my link to my Twitter on my Instagram, etc. And make sure to check if you use a screen name that's even part of your personal, look it up. Just, especially if it's something kind of unique, just look it up. And when Google's like, did you mean this? Or do you actually want to look up this? Second option. See if there's anything out there that you maybe forgot about years ago. A last FM, a photo bucket. You never know. And especially be extremely careful if any industry names are close to or mimic something that you've used personally. Keeping those extremely separate. I cannot say this enough. I know I'm probably starting to get annoying, but I want you guys to be safe. And we don't think about this stuff because we're assuming that we're in a fairly normal world, which we have a right to assume that. Unfortunately, that's not the experience, as you know, many fellow performers will tell you. So that, I would say, go into your phone. When it talks about location and privacy, I invite you to really scour through exactly what's going on. I invite you to really scour through any social media, all the privacy stuff. You know, when it comes up, hey, here's a new app you've opened. Do you want it to be able to track you across other apps? Ask app not to track. Just things that where we can limit that footprint. Yeah, so please look at anything that's associated. Please look at email, please look at phone. I encourage using Google Voice, anything. You know, you definitely want to have separate stuff. Sometimes even separate, you know, like, oh, my personal's Yahoo, my work is Gmail, stuff like that. So you can really functionally keep it separate. So other things that we can do is use your options on the sites that you're on sooner than later. I would say when you're starting to pick up on those red flags we talked about, use blocking, use muting, use restricting. A big thing I use when I feel uncomfortable or unsafe, for instance, on like Instagram, which you can do on other places, remove follower. I'm going to manually get you out of here. especially if they come back to, you got to send a follow request or block or things like that. So use the support that you have. It's always okay to reach out. This is not causing a problem. It's okay to limit people, to block. It's okay to say, I've been having multiple issues with this person. Can you, this person has started cyberstalking me. Or this person makes me feel unsafe. Can you please keep an eye out for me regarding if they're making further accounts? Limit your chat room to only people that have, money in their account or are registered. That doesn't mean that it'll stop everything, but spam accounts from stalkers, again, roadblocks, the more the better. And also when we do things like set up these roadblocks, it's adding more control back to us. So I'm starting to level the playing field. When we sit there and we feel like this person is going to harm me, hurt me and my family, and there's nothing I can do, that is not a position we want to feel like we're in. There are always things that we can do to let people know it is not okay. And I know that going outside to seek safety when it comes to things like, law enforcement, et cetera, is not very comfortable for people in the industry. So as much as I just want people to know that's an option, I'm definitely not going to heavily encourage that, because I think we all know that sometimes it cannot be taken seriously. But I always think the better, it's good to have things on record, even if you're just keeping your own personal record of things. Screenshots, voice recording is great, using like a phone call recorder. There's so many tools out there to make you feel like you can reestablish a sense of control. A big thing I'm going to put out there. Some people do in some ways kind of have their legal name out there. I've definitely seen people that use a certain stage name and then their email kind of has their legal name in it. I don't encourage that, like I said. But when it comes to your legal name, this is just something I want everyone to know. Please, please, please learn your state's, country, province rules on these things. So for me in Florida, if you are registered to vote, your name, address, and potentially phone number is out there, and that is considered normal and that is legal here in Florida. So you have to go through a lot to ask all these sites to take it down. So there are some sites that I would consider looking into. If you do happen to be in Florida, there's one called, it's like FL Voters. I can't remember if it's .org, but if you look that up, it's got a list of like everybody that's been registered to vote, their former addresses, who they're related to. This terrified me when I found it out. So if you're in a state or place with public records, I encourage you to just start the process of changing things for sure. Checking, especially after you move. I would give it like 2 months, 1 or 2 months. Look up your name and state, look up your name and city, see what's coming up. Because from this, then people can start looking into public record. It gets really ugly. So I just want you guys to know what's out there. Okay, good question. If you have to pay the sites to remove them, is it worth it? Now, Eve, this is a really good question. I would say I have personally never had to pay. There are some sites that will say that. Yes, it is very much typically a scam. If you guys would bear with me while I'm kind of talking, there's an article that I would love to share. If I can find it. If not, I will definitely get it to to Leia, but yeah. So yes, I would say typically if you have to pay, that is a scam. So most of the time, if you, the easiest method for me, I would say, because sometimes you really do have to dig. Yes. Yeah, you're right. White Pages, My Life definitely does. White Pages is a little more on the up and up, can be a little more challenging. But the interesting thing is that the majority of these sites do have an ability to remove yourself, but the amount of digging you have to do is quite out of control. So usually I will head back to Google and then type in the site and say remove or something like that. And then you'll find some oddball page that's like dug 20 feet into their website to remove yourself. And oftentimes it does seem to work. I've had an occasion where I've had to do it again, but many times it just asks you to find the link to your page, put in your name, stuff like that. But yeah, if you have to deal with paying or anything like that, then I'm starting to question what is going on there. Yeah, so it's these, if you want to know just kind of the broad word, it's the people search directories. So I believe this is the page that I used. Yeah, I think this is the page. I will send it to you all in the chat. I know this is a little more US based. I think nope, I did not. I just sent that. I just did not send that to everybody. Okay, thanks. Try again. All right. A lot of pages like this, but I remember using this one particularly because it'll tell you exactly what to look for. So this is going to give you the list of the most common. And then you'll also, there's some, so it is from a couple of years ago. It has been updated, I believe. Yeah, it has been updated this year. So there are some old comments, but this can be very helpful. And it does cover White Pages. It does cover people search, Truth Finder, Spokio, all that junk. So check that out. Also, there's one, I think it's called Family Tree Now. That one is even more sketchy. I think that's what it is. Yes, that is the one. I'm also going to put that in the chat just to encourage you to look at as well, because that one is under the guise of looking up a family tree, but what it actually does is list like your literal family and friends when they were born. Not good. So yes, be aware of the laws and rules of the state. Oops, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Oh my God, I keep doing insane things. Okay, here we go. Guys, thanks for bearing with me. It is truly a day. Okay, yes. So also, even this process, even if you have not dealt with bullying, you're not dealing with it, it can be scary to be like, oh my God, I am plastered all over the internet. Please, as a therapist to folks, please, I encourage you to remind yourself that once you found it, you can start taking action. Action is what will alleviate some of those fears and start reestablishing control. It's okay to have your initial moment of shock, but we have to be able to move forward. So, okay, let me see. The sites like this that have your family members, that list you as their family. So what I've done specifically on sites like this is I will actually tell them so they can remove themselves, or you can do it on their behalf. So you kind of just take out one by one each family member, and then you're essentially gone from there. So this specific site, I believe, I haven't done it in a minute. It's a little bit easier than some of them, which, yeah. So since I'm just looking at the time, I do want you guys to know that this sounds like a lot. It can feel like a lot. If you are actively being stalked or harassed, yes, these things will have to be done a lot faster. If you are going for more preparation, education, prevention, pick the most important first. Don't put everything at the buffet on your plate. There's some things we can just let sit there and we can pick up tomorrow. So figure out what you feel like is most concerning to you. Like, I have this linked with this. That's no good. Start there. You'll pick away at it one by one, and eventually you'll have yourself a nice, pruned, picturesque, kind of presentation online. But I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I highly encourage, unless you have verified somebody, seen them, spoken to them, hello, spoken to them, have people that can kind of back them. You do want to be careful about building friendships, especially, with certain individuals that are maybe newer to being clients or customers. As much as oftentimes when we feel isolated and alone, we're seeking support. Yes, the people on the other side of the screen are humans. Just because they're in a different role than us doesn't mean that we can't speak to them and relax and hang out and make acquaintances. But I just invite you to take really great care about who will ever move forward with having more personal information, especially the name and location. The other stuff can kind of be figured out, but full name and location, or first name if it's a really distinct name. And also just kind of be aware of freely discussing where you're at. I hate even talking about this because it's scary to think about. But sometimes we just, we're on cam and we're like, I just went down to blah, blah, blah the other day. And it's a very specific place that's only in your state or only in a certain, part of the country or province or anything. Just kind of take a quick glance around your room. Do I have anything that can identify me? Like, I hate doing this, but I'm just, unfortunately, this is the world that we're in, where people, they have developed ways to target people in the industry now a little bit differently. So they've adapted ways to exploit folks that use more internet and web-based experiences for their work and clientele. So unfortunately, a lot of work comes with that. And then when it comes to personal, one of the best things that I would recommend to anybody, no matter what, is get yourself some type of home camera. I find that it helps. I really do. Having it can, even if I'm not saying that it's going to stop people that want to do things or that it's perfect or that it's the answer, but remember, roadblocks. Please just remember roadblocks. Anything that we do that will make someone more frustrated and lose patience and maybe give up is worth it. And anything that will help you with your peace of mind is absolutely worth it. So whatever you take from this today, what others have said, anything that's kind of piqued your interest, please follow that and do what makes you feel good and comfortable. Because if we feel a sense of feeling unsafe, the mental health effects of that are really strong, because that's one of our basic needs besides, food and water, having a roof over our head. We need to feel safe in our space. And our work should never be something, adding on to a lack of safety. So the real message I want to promote here is you always have a sense of control with an action plan, set up those roadblocks, and you still have power. These situations may trigger a lot of things, past trauma, anxiety, fear. But at the end of the day, you can always have a plan of action. You can always reach out to other performers, build a system of support, lean on those that you do have, and just, think of some of these privacy concerns and how you can make everything work for you so you can go to work and feel okay. So I will pause there to leave a couple minutes for if anyone has any questions. This is such a large, complex topic. I tried not to bowl you guys over. I probably always do. I tend to get ranty when I get passionate. But yeah, again, my name is Rachel. If you need anything from me, please reach out to Pineapple. If you have any comments you think of after this ends, you can still send them along to Pineapple or send them to Leah. She has always gotten them to me and I've always answered, usually within 24 to 48 hours. So don't be discouraged if you forgot or thought of something. If you need logistical support and help, if you have a really specific situation going on and could use some, guidance, please let me know and I will definitely try to lead you in the right direction. But other than that, I encourage you to reach out to if you have your own Pineapple support therapist. If not, I would definitely recommend finding one because they're really good folks, support groups, listeners. We are here for you. Please feel free to use us. We want to support you and make the industry safe and comfortable. All right. Yes. Thank you very much, Beth. I appreciate all of you who came, all of you who are seeing this later on. So yes, so if you need anything, just let me know. I will, I'll be around. All right, I hope all of you have a good rest of your day and take care of yourself.